Hello there. My name's Brian, and I recently finished writing a memoir about my experiences with psychosis and drug use and quantum suicide and all kinds of other fun stuff. I wanted to read it aloud and share it with YouTube, so I just wanted to do that, and let's jump right in. Today I'm just going to be reading the prologue and the first chapter. Which just kind of sets the stage for everything. So I'm going to switch the screen up so that you can read along as I read. I'm not great at reading aloud, so bear with me. I'm going to do my best. So let's jump right in. Okay, this is Bee's Pickled Juice, a memoir by Brian Andrew Sims. That's me. Prologue. I started writing this book in March of 2020 when I was furloughed from my restaurant job in Williamsburg, Virginia because of COVID-19. I signed up for unemployment benefits and was suddenly faced with more time on my hands than I knew what to do with, and I was largely stuck in my house. I was living with my mom, who was high risk, so I was scared shitless of catching the coronavirus and spreading it to her. The thought of losing my mom kept me indoors for most of the year. I decided to write this memoir because I had a life-changing experience back in 2015, and no matter how hard I tried, I could never sum up the experience in an anecdote. I wanted so badly to share with people what happened to me, but there was too much to tell and never enough time. I thought that if only I could tell my story, maybe people would finally understand me. I know there are others out there who've had similar experiences, and I feel that any first-hand account of total madness is valuable to the world. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of this thing, I want to give some context about me and how I ended up where I am. I'm a high school dropout with a GED and a few credits from a community college under my belt. Before this, I had never written anything longer than 15 pages, and I never thought I would need to. I've always been an underachiever, and accolades never meant much to me, even with my passion projects. Between 2002 and 2015, I spent most of my time and attention playing guitar and singing in punk bands. My bands never garnered much recognition because in 13 years, I only toured with one band, and it was towards the end of my music career. Since I never toured, labels didn't really care about signing me. I never booked any tours because I always felt tied down by working a job and paying the rent. I could never save enough money to take off more than a handful of days at a time. I mostly worked menial jobs to pay the bills while I pursued my dreams of being a professional musician, and never gave two shits about planning for my future. All I cared about was that I was able to have a band, that I kept a reasonably good reputation within the Richmond punk scene, that I had a comfortable place to sleep at night, and that I was able to find a good girlfriend with whom I could spend my life. Despite my years of obsessing about finding a perfect girlfriend, most of my adult life I've spent alone because the quality of girl I was looking for seldom had the urge to date someone as broke and hopeless as I was. I probably came off as desperate a lot of the time as well. I managed to have a few relationships here and there, but they were few and far between, and they always ended badly. Saving for retirement never occurred to me, since I believed the world's end was quickly approaching. I still kind of think this, but I'm planning now anyway. Building credit didn't matter, and neither did buying a home or starting a family. All I cared about was chasing the high I got when my music started a great mosh pit. That, and actually getting high on drugs. Drugs were a huge focus of mine. I've been medicated for one mental illness or another for most of my life, so jumping from prescriptions to hard drugs never seemed like a particularly large leap. Most of my 20s I spent high on one form of amphetamine or another, and when I got to about 30, opiates became my vice. Those drugs always provided me with a temporary relief from my miserable baseline, so it was really more of a form of self-medication than thrill-seeking, and despite my heavy amphetamine use, my smile still looks okay. But I'm missing all of the molars on my lower right side of my mouth, and I've needed a lot of... Hold on. Dental work done. I've needed a lot of dental work done. Sorry about that. I'm hoping that someday I'll be able to get work done that will allow me to chew with the right side of my mouth again. Most of the jobs I've worked were in restaurants. I waited tables, I drove as a delivery driver, I did a little bartending, and although those jobs were usually fun, they didn't allow for a lot of freedom with regards to taking time off for shows, recording, and touring with my bands. Because I never graduated college, and because I moved out on my own when I was 18, my marketable skills were fairly limited. In the latter half of the aughts, my drummer Adam helped a friend of his, Jonathan, start a new taxi company, about which you will soon learn a lot. The company would go on to become Richmond's top-rated taxi service and would maintain that title until taxis became obsolete. Jonathan was the brains behind the operation, but Adam did a lot to help make things happen. They started the company with a couple of cell phones, TomTom GPSs, a Crown Vic and an Impala, and a whole lot of drive. No pun intended. At first, they operated from my band's practice space, which was also where Adam was living. It was a tiny room in a small office building that had been repurposed for band rehearsal spaces. It didn't take long for John and Adam to establish a base of operations, but I always thought it was cool that such a successful company came from such humble and familiar beginnings. I ended up driving for the cab company for several years, and the experiences I had from that job had a serious effect on how I perceived society and the world at large, and not necessarily for the better. More on that later. For 13 years, I lived a punk rock lifestyle with hopes of making a music career for myself. I was poor, I lived in squalor, I ate like shit, I drank like a fish, I partied like there was no tomorrow, and I had tons of fun. I did a lot of fucking up and a lot of drugs in those 13 years. It seemed like I'd never get the hang of success or even approach it, but in 2015, things started to turn around for me. I had been in a great relationship for about a year, and I had formed a band that had real potential to go places. Unfortunately, the promise of a better future came to an abrupt end in August due to some unforeseen difficulties with my mental health, and that's putting it mildly. I was unable to bring the band into the limelight before I crashed, and ultimately had to make some serious changes to my way of life. I'm lucky I survived, and even luckier that I have kept my wonderful girlfriend. This is the story of how I lost my mind and how I got some of it back. My hope is that the story will be invaluable to people wanting a better understanding of mental illness and for those who want to know firsthand what it's like to suffer with psychosis. Part 1. Scotch, drugs, and karaoke for breakfast. It'll be fine. I need it to help me focus on writing new music. Without it, I'm unmotivated, and I get easily distracted, and with it, I feel motivated, happy, and focused. I'm finally working with some people who act like professionals. I really think this new band that Steve and I formed has a chance at getting big enough that I could make a living from it. For once, the future's looking bright, and I want to make sure I don't fuck this up. I was practicing my spiel to my wide-eyed reflection in the rearview mirror of my white 2004 Honda Accord, which I had recently inherited as an early 31st birthday present from my mother. I was parked across the street from Janie's ground floor apartment, and I was getting ready to tell her I had just filled a new prescription for speed. Janie and I had been together for almost a year, and she was well aware of the fact that I had been medicated for various mental illnesses for most of my life. She was also aware of my addictive personality, so I was preparing what I would say to her about my new prescription for Adderall. I did not anticipate her being thrilled about it. I had had prescriptions for it during a few different periods of my adult life, but it had been about 4 years since I had used it. Janie had recently gotten upset with me about self-medicating with low doses of Suboxone, a synthetic opioid which came in the form of a dissolvable sublingual orange film. The drug is supposed to be used to wean people off heroin, but usually people just replace their heroin dependency with a dependency on it. For those who are not physically dependent on opiates, Suboxone can make one feel euphoric, warm and fuzzy, and maybe a little pukey. For people who have a tolerance for opiates, the drug simply keeps the user from getting dope sick. I had gotten to the point with the Suboxone use where I could take it and feel good without it making me sick to my stomach. I'd cut a strip into 4 pieces so I could re-up my dose every few hours. Oftentimes I would keep a little cellophane pouch from a cigarette box in my wallet, stuffed with a handful of these little orange tabs. Suboxone made my job as a taxi driver more enjoyable. While high on it, or any kind of opiate for that matter, it didn't bother me as much when people wanted to haggle with me over the price of their fare, or obnoxiously blow their vomit breath of death in my face when they'd inevitably get close to me and sloppily ask me what my craziest cab driving experience was. I didn't often use other opiates because I had a convenient supplier of Suboxone at the time, and I was careful about not getting physically dependent on it. Despite my caution, Janie didn't like me using it, so I stopped. Mostly. Janie worked full-time as a server at Penny Lane Pub in downtown Richmond, Virginia, just 2 blocks from my apartment. Penny Lane is a Beatles-themed British pub on the corner of 5th and Franklin, and it's probably the most comfortable and welcoming bar in Richmond. Actually, on second thought, it could be the second after Patrick Henry's pub in Church Hill, but it's debatable. Penny Lane is housed in a building that looks like it was ripped straight from the French Quarter of New Orleans, with balconies hanging from the sides of the second and third stories that are protected by black iron railings. The front of the pub has 3 high and narrow archways, which are blocked by green wrought iron faux gates with golden spires. These non-functioning gates separate the covered patio from the sidewalk. Flower boxes full of pansies hang from the gates about 4 feet from the ground. British and American flags protrude from the stucco walls between the archways. Above the archways is a dark green sign with the pub's namesake written in old-fashioned golden script. The entrance to the pub is on the patio, and the entrance to the patio is on the side of the building under a red awning. When the pub is closed, the entrance to the patio is blocked by a large iron gate that, unlike the gates on the front of the building, actually does shutter. Because I worked nights and slept during the day, it was rare for me to go out drinking in bars at night. Penny Lane was not a place I frequented, despite my affinity for it and its close proximity to my home. Occasionally, I would go there to eat an 8 p.m. breakfast in the form of shepherd's pie and a double shot of Macallan's, because I was never good with my money and I loved scotch. The first time I met Janie was on the night of her 30th birthday, when I was awarded the privilege of driving her home in my taxicab. I received an order on my dash-mounted tablet for a Catherine to be picked up from Penny Lane Pub in late June of 2013, with no destination given on the order, which was something that always grinded my gears. When I pulled up in front of the pub, a short red-headed girl walked up to my passenger side window holding on to a tall, cockeyed blonde with cute, boyishly short hair, who was having trouble keeping her feet on the ground. I rolled down the window, and the redhead, who I assumed was Catherine, introduced me to the wobbly young lady as Janie, and then told me that Janie was who I would be driving home. Catherine told me that Janie had been celebrating her birthday, and that it was important that I take good care of her. She asked me to promise that I would wait for Janie to get inside her apartment before driving away, to which, naturally, I agreed. Catherine gave me a $20 bill and Janie's address and told me that I could keep whatever change was left over. Janie's apartment wasn't far, so Catherine's tip was indeed very generous. When Janie flopped her body down in the cab like a big sack of potatoes, it was clear that she was blacked out. She dove in head first and face-planted on the seat. The momentum from her dive caused her legs to curl up behind her and then fall and limply hang out from the side of the car. Catherine hopped to and assisted Janie by stuffing her long legs into the cab and then slamming the doors shut before they could pop back out again. Janie proceeded to maneuver her body into an upright position with seemingly great difficulty, then sprawled out in the back seat of my ex-police car with one foot on the floor in front of her and the other on the seat behind me. She exclaimed that it was her birthday and that she had just finished partying with her coworkers, in a way that suggested that she was unaware that Catherine had just given me the same information. I chuckled and wished her a happy birthday, and we rode quietly to her apartment. When we arrived, I parked the cab in the middle of the street, turned on my hazards, and helped her out. I got back in the cab and waited until she stumbled gracelessly into her apartment before driving off. After that night, I saw Janie around town several times and would awkwardly try to say hello when I could, but I didn't formally meet her until over a year later when my roommate, Bradley, who did frequent the pub, dragged me out of my apartment on one of my nights off in early fall of 2014. "Come out with me, you never go anywhere anymore," urged Bradley. "It's karaoke night and I need a backup singer." "I don't think I want to go out tonight. I just want to stay in, take some GBs, and watch Adult Swim," I replied lazily. GBs are what I called gravity bong hits. "Come on, man, Janie's going to be there. Come flirt with her." "Don't you like her? Didn't you say that you thought she was cute? You haven't been with a girl in over a year. You know that shit's not healthy, right?" Bradley was laying it on thick. "I seriously doubt she even knows who I am. I really don't feel like embarrassing myself tonight," I whined like a bitch. "She knows who you are. I wouldn't tell you to come talk to her if I didn't know that she'd be into you," Bradley reassured me. "I don't know, man. I'm feeling lazy tonight. You sure it'll be worth my time?" I waffled. "Yes, come on, man. It'll be fun. And if it's not, you can always come home." He was firmly twisting my arm. All right. Let me just get dressed. I'll be ready in a few," I conceded. "Sweet, hurry." Bradley was a good-looking guy of average build and stature, who was a couple of years younger than me. He had short blonde hair, a matching full beard, and a winner's smile. He worked as an aide for a Virginia state senator and was a pro at schmoozing with people and persuading them to see things his way. We arrived at the pub a short while later and pushed our way through the dimly lit and tightly packed main bar to the stairwell that led to the upstairs bar, where the karaoke was always held. As we climbed the steps, we could hear that someone was singing Radiohead's Creep badly, which reaffirmed to us that karaoke was indeed happening. When we got to the top of the stairs and rounded the corner into the bar, a thin haze of stale cigarette smoke hung in the upper half of the room's atmosphere, along with the grating sound of a performer's drunken attempts at sounding like Tom York. The room was well lit for a pub, and it wasn't particularly crowded. Janie was sitting at the bar nursing a large frosty mug of beer and talking with the bartender. There was an empty shot glass beside her beer. Bradley and I casually walked up beside Janie and ordered ourselves some drinks before engaging with her. "Hey, Janie. How's it going? You've met Brian, haven't you?" Bradley asked with smooth familiarity. I think so," she grimaced with uncertainty. "I don't know. I meet a lot of people. You do look familiar, though." "Well, regardless, let's pretend you're meeting now, for the first time. I think you two will get along," Bradley reassured her, and at that grabbed his beer and left the two of us to ourselves. Janie and I immediately hit it off. We grabbed a couple of bar stools along the wall at the front of the room, and we chatted about our common interests, the commonalities between working in a bar and working in a taxi, and our favorite musicians. We found that we had similar dark senses of humor and that we were both underachieving high school dropouts. I wasn't planning on singing anything, but Bradley signed me up to sing Octopus's Garden because he thought that my average-at-best Ringo impression would win Janie over. I knew this was a bad idea because Janie had just told me that despite working in a Beatles-themed restaurant, she actually hated the Beatles, which was almost a deal-breaker for me. I reluctantly got up when my name was called and actually sang the song pretty well, as the song doesn't require a very wide range. My experience performing in various punk bands over the years helped me feel comfortable singing in front of the crowd. I suppose Bradley's scheme must have worked, despite Janie's disdain for the Fab Four, because at around 1 in the morning, Bradley and I invited Janie and her friend Catherine, the ginger girl from the first time I met Janie, back to our apartment to continue drinking, take some GBs, and watch some late-night cartoons, the activities I had originally planned on doing by myself that evening. The girls were more than happy to join us. We stayed up talking, drinking, and smoking until about 4 in the morning, at which point we all passed out. The next morning, I was so excited to have met someone special. I put Janie's number in my phone and told her that I'd text her later. I took her to her cobalt blue 97 Mustang, which she had parked in my building's basement garage at some point I vaguely remember after leaving the pub. I gave her a hug, and I watched and waved as she drove away. I walked back to the elevator with a bounce in my step while intermittently hopping up and clicking my heels in the air. When I got back upstairs to my apartment, Bradley was waiting to gloat about being my matchmaker, which I didn't really mind since I was grateful for his services. Bradley and I had a great loft apartment on the top floor of the Barry Burke building in downtown Richmond, Virginia, with one other roommate named Jerry. With the exception of the front portion of the apartment, the ceilings were probably about 20 feet high, maybe higher, I don't know, and the windows were all higher up than any of us could reach without a step stool or a ladder. The windows provided a great view of the city's skyline, which was always nice to look at, especially during sunsets and snowstorms. Bradley's room was in the loft portion of the apartment, which overlooked the living room and the windows, and was at the top of a narrow spiral staircase. Jerry and I had our own spacious bedrooms, but the walls were so thin that they may as well have been made of paper. The thin walls made sleeping difficult when Bradley and or Jerry were up playing video games together in the living room. My room was the master bedroom, which I shared with my cat Owen, and I was lucky enough to enjoy the convenience of having my own bathroom and walk-in closet. It cost me almost $700 a month, which was difficult to pull off every month, but that room was definitely worth the money. Bradley was a good friend to me. He had recently been concerned about me because, in his opinion, I had been somewhat self-destructive. I hadn't been involved with a woman in over a year, and I had gotten used to the idea that maybe I was undateable. Why? I could never be too sure. I wasn't a particularly unattractive person. People generally liked me. Women just tended to never want anything more than platonic relationships with me. Perhaps they could tell I was a social dropout with no plans for the future. Maybe they could sense that I was damaged goods. Maybe I smelled badly. I don't know. My girlfriend from my senior year of high school, Sarah, my first love and the girl with whom I dropped out of high school, had rekindled a relationship-like thing with me in long-distance form in the summer of 2013. She initiated this relationship by contacting me via email, but after we had visited with each other a few times and corresponded daily for about 3 months, she cut off all communications without warning. We had talked about one day moving to Oregon together. We made plans to go to her office Christmas party that year, and even discussed what we would be wearing to it. We made all kinds of plans, but it turned out that she only started talking to me while she and her long-term boyfriend, who was actually an old friend of mine, had gone on an extended break of sorts. I think Sarah was just weighing her options and didn't consider how much it would hurt me when she inevitably decided that I wasn't good enough for her. The thing is, I had secretly hoped that she and I would get back together for over a decade, so when things ended abruptly, it devastated me. Well, it's not completely true that I hoped to get back together for the whole decade. I had girlfriends a few times throughout the decade, and I wasn't thinking about her when I was with any of them, but whenever I was single, I would hope that she and I would somehow get back together. I acted like it wasn't a big deal when she stopped talking to me, but it really did break my heart. I did eventually get over it and stopped hoping for any kind of a future with her, which was great because I was finally able to let go of my dreams of reconciliation. I realized that when she ghosted me, she never reciprocated the kind of feelings I had for her, and that realization freed me from those stupid feelings of unrequited love that haunted me for years. Looking back, I wonder how I could have ever held on to such feelings for so long. It is, in my opinion, that unrequited love is for spineless beta males and those pathetic nice guys who are disingenuously servile towards women as a means to get what they want from them. I hate the idea that I ever could have been one of those assholes. I wish I could say that this heartbreak over Sarah was the reason for my aforementioned self-destructive behavior, but the simple truth is I was a hedonist. Bradley and I liked to party together, when we could. Never anything too extreme. Weed and alcohol were the only things in which we partook with any kind of regularity. A few times we took acid, which was a lot of fun, but the acid was always much weaker than the stuff I had taken a few years prior when I lived in Oakland and had had a few fantastic trips in San Francisco. Sometimes Bradley and I would score some blow, but didn't have our own guy, so finding it was always considered to be a special occasion. Sometimes I would manage to get my own bag of coke without telling Bradley and do it by myself to fuel long sessions of guitar playing and songwriting. I'd always end up compulsively telling him about it, though, after the fact, because I've always hated keeping secrets from friends. Bradley was worried about me because he never knew anyone personally who preferred to do coke by themselves. He seemed to think that it was dangerous behavior in which only hardcore addicts partook. Conversely, I thought it was weird that he only liked doing coke in party scenarios. I didn't like the group dynamics that resulted from sharing a gram, which was all my friends and I could ever afford. At the end of the gram, everyone seemed to think that they didn't get their fair share, and would always get upset when they couldn't get their hands on more. I suppose everyone who does drugs has their own preferences regarding how they do them, and that's just fine with me. Anyway, back to the story. A few days after we met, I texted Janie to see how she was doing and to see if she would want to hang out again. I waited and waited for a reply, but she never responded. I tried to act cool about it, so I obsessed patiently to myself for another 2 days before trying her again. Again, she didn't answer. Weird. I thought we had made a connection. Why isn't she texting me back? Maybe I'll ask Bradley if he's seen her. So I texted Janie a few times, but she never texted me back. Have you seen her recently? I mean, has she said anything about me? I asked Bradley while trying to seem nonchalant. Well, I heard she went up to Fredericksburg because her sister was having a baby, but I'm pretty sure she's back now. I was just about to go over to the pub. You want to come with me to see if she's there? He replied. You don't think it'll be weird? What if she's avoiding me? Dude, stop it. Stop thinking like that. She's not avoiding you. There's probably a good reason why she hasn't texted you back. Let's go over and find out. We walked over to Penny Lane, and sure enough, Janie was there, but she was busy working. Bradley and I waved to her as we pushed our way through the bar to the stairwells so we could go to the smoking section upstairs. She and I made eye contact, and she gave a half smile and a quick wave to indicate she knew that we were there. Bradley said it would be better for us to have some drinks upstairs so we could smoke and play games while we waited for Janie to join us. He said that she would join us as soon as she had some downtime. Sure enough, about 10 minutes later, and a big breakfast beer later, Janie entered the room and came directly to the table where Bradley and I were sitting. Hey, Janie, it's good to see you again. Did you get any of my messages? I've tried texting you a few times, I said bashfully. No, that's weird. I haven't gotten any of them. Sorry that I haven't tried getting in touch. My sister just had a baby, and I've been up in Fredericksburg. I wanted to be there for the delivery, Janie explained apologetically. Oh, well, congratulations on being an aunt. But I wonder why you didn't get any of my texts. Do I have the right number? I asked as I pulled out my phone to check. I showed Janie the number I had saved under her name and learned that it was off by a single digit. Ah, so that's why. That makes me feel a lot better. I was worried that you just didn't want anything to do with me. I laughed nervously. Nope, she said, but hey, I gotta get back to work. I should be done in a little while. You guys gonna stick around? Yeah, Bradley and I are gonna hang out, play darts, and maybe some pool. Cool, I'll come join you guys as soon as I'm done. I'm cut, so I should just have to finish the 2 tables I'm waiting on, and then I'll be done, said Janie before heading back downstairs. After that night, Janie and I were inseparable. We began spending all of our free time together. In the first 2 weeks that we were together, Janie knitted me a beanie and repaired my glasses, which had been held together with tape for several weeks because they had been broken when I accidentally sat on them. I didn't have much to offer in ways of making things or fixing things, so I took on the job of giving her back and foot massages whenever we would watch TV or movies together. I thought about writing her a song, but I didn't because I felt weird about doing something so mushy when we had kept everything so cool. We never got overly romantic with each other, but we grew to love each other very much all the same. Fast forward back to May of 2015, where we began, when I was preparing to tell Janie about my new prescription. I let myself into Janie's apartment and announced my arrival. I'm in the bedroom, she called back to me. I made my way to the bedroom and found Janie lying on her stomach, reading a book on her king-size bed. I sat down next to her and began to rub her back. Hey, so I just got back from the doctor and I got a new prescription, I said as I kneaded her shoulder blades with my elbow. Ow, not so hard. So, why are you telling me? She asked. Well, it's for Adderall, for my ADHD. I used to take it a few years ago, and it always helped me stay focused on whatever I was working on. It generally makes me feel happier and more motivated, too. I'm just telling you so you'll know why, if I might be acting a little differently from usual, I said as a look of concern washed over Janie's face. You know that shit is just legal speed, right? I mean, you do whatever you think will help you, but I don't know if you should be taking that stuff all the time, she said coolly. Well, now that Steve and I are working on this new band, I really want to focus on writing new music. We're going to ditch the heavy crust punk stuff we were doing in 45 AD. We want to do melodic hardcore / pop punk stuff now. Stuff like NoFX, Bad Religion, or The Vandals. Jim, who goes by Shoob, from the band Channel 43, is going to be playing drums, and Jameson, the guy who plays Beefcake the Mighty for Guar, is going to be playing bass with us. We're actually starting 2 new bands. One is going to be all original stuff that Steve and I are going to write, and the other will be a cover band of a cover band. We're going to play covers of Me First and the Gimme Gimme songs, I exclaimed while trying to repress my chemically enhanced enthusiasm. Jameson was looking for people to do the cover band, and we were looking for someone to play bass for our new project, so we just agreed to help each other out. Jameson and I both came up with the idea for the cover band independently of each other too, which I thought was pretty neat. I just never thought I'd find other people actually wanting to do it. It's a pretty stupid idea, but the potential to make money with it is pretty good. I originally wanted to sing, but seeing as how Jameson is kind of a big deal compared to me, I didn't fight him for that role. I'm happy just to play guitar and sing backup vocals. That's pretty exciting, I'm happy for you, said Janie half-heartedly while still staring at her book. Yeah, and the Adderall will also be good because I want to start learning stuff so that I can start working with computers. I'm going to start learning Linux, and I think the drugs will help me focus on learning the concepts I need to learn. I'm just so tired of struggling to make money ever since all of my tipping customers jumped ship to start using Uber. I just can't compete with that shit, I said with a tinge of exasperation in my voice. So that was the end of Chapter 1. It was sort of a strange way to end it, I know. But I want to thank you for sticking around to the end. If you enjoyed it, please smash that like button, as they like to say on YouTube, and share it with your friends. And I hope you come back next week for Chapter 2. Again, thank you for sticking through to the end. And oh yeah, sorry about the way I set up the screen and how it covered the bottom left side of the page. It made it impossible to read along with me. I didn't think about that when I was setting it up, but I don't feel like doing it again, so you'll just have to deal with bad reading. But next time I'll set it up so that it doesn't cover the whole the lower half of the page. Again, thank you. I love you. Bye.